Penn State football people, it is blue-white breakdown time. Monday, June 23rd, high noon, as we are recording this. Bob Flounders along with Max Ralph. Max, you're looking well, and I teased this in our little conversation before we started, but Max, I immediately am regretting and taking back everything I said about June getting off to a rainy, somewhat chilly start as I sit here in downtown Harrisburg. I don't know what the temperature is outside, but it's got to be pushing mid 90s already with the heat index. And it's here to stay, and I know my body's going to get used to it, but I ran my big mouth last week, I think, at this time, and now I would like to take some of that back. If we could be a middle ground and we could just live in the low 80s, that would be fantastic. But right now, I'm just going to take my medicine. How are you doing?
Bob, I'm with you on the weather. The rain was kind of annoying. I was complaining too, but what I've had conversations about with people in the past, in State College especially, worse than in Harrisburg, it is so cold for so long
Yeah.
in the winter. I will never ever complain about how hot it gets because we gotta take all of the semi to warm weather we can get in central Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
it's definitely warm, but we're doing well. I got out to Rehoboth Beach with my girlfriend over the weekend, so that was fun. Um, Terrorized some claw machines, Bob, and yeah, we had
Oh,
a great.
I know what those things are. Yeah, yeah. Did you win anything?
We did. It was pretty impressive. We first few tries too. Like I don't usually have that good of luck, so it was fun.
I did. That's a skill I did not know you possessed. I'm not surprised, Max, but I wish you well in future clawing endeavors. Max, the last time you and I chatted here on the Blue White Breakdown, and by the way, Penn State people, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You can find the Blue White Breakdown podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Spotify's one. That's where I go. There's a bunch of others. Max probably knows more than me, but thank you for watching and listening to this. Max, the last time we chatted, not that Penn State's this class is good. This class is really good, but you can't win them all. We didn't think they were going to win some battles. One big in-state battle on Friday over Joey O'Brien. It came to pass. The way that it played out, were there any surprises? And what would your message be to Penn State fans about weighing the most recent things with the overall success that James Franklin and his assistants are having on the recruiting trail, not only in 2026, but in 2027, 2025, 2024, 2022's. I was just talking about this yesterday. That 2022 recruiting class, people might be, if this season goes the way Penn State fans want it to, people might be writing books about the 2022 recruiting class. But what's your overall thinking after what played out on Friday?
A lot of strands to kind of go into, but I think you and I did a good job of hitting most of them on Thursday as well. Because, for example, you mentioned the 2022 class, like they had to bring all those guys back. That cost money, that cost revenue sharing, that cost NIL, whatever you want. I mean, look, in a lot of cases, these losses that Penn State experienced on the recruiting trail over the past week really boil down to money. James Franklin is generally not interested in paying top dollar for a high school kid because, as he's made clear in press conferences, and as you know, we've gotten the sense of over the years, Penn State prefers to be a developmental program. You come in from day one, you earn that spot by, even if it's day one or if it's by the end of your senior year. They want you to be there for the long haul. You don't see a lot of transfers out of Penn State, and that's a good thing. That's a positive sign. But when it comes to kids who are, 5-star upper end talent, sometimes it can be harder to sway them over toward Penn State when there's money going to other purposes, to roster retention, to big transfer portal fillers. So it's just interesting. And look, Notre Dame is a very good program.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Freeman has built a great culture with that program as well. I think that You can probably draw a number of similarities between, Marcus Freeman's values as a head coach and James Franklin's. I'm sure some fans will come at me for saying that, considering the press conference debacle that was completely blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
Um, but like, I
Yeah.
think you can draw some similarities between both of those guys. I think that they do a great job with their public image. Like, I think that they run good programs,
Mm.
and so I think that, like, a lot of it boils down to money, and that's the hard truth. But Penn State was never going to go to that place that some of these other programs are willing to go to. Now, it hurts. Like, there's no way around it. Joey O'Brien is a 5-star kid. Kari Adams, the corner from Maryland, is a borderline 5-star kid. He's not yet. He might not be, but he's really good, really solid. Where we go from here, there are other prospects out there that Penn State still wants. There's a
Hmm.
5-star offensive lineman who, is really good, that has Penn State on his radar still. There's a 5-star defensive end that Penn State is still in the running for, Carter Meadows. There's a couple of 4-star defensive ends that are on the upper echelon of things that Penn State is still in there on, to replace Luke Wafel.
Mm.
There's still 4-star corners. I mean, Dorian Barney is a kid who Penn State fans definitely need to know. Like, he's a 4-star corner. He's from Erie, even though he lives in Georgia now. Like, there are still some names out there. I like, this can still be a good recruiting class, Bob, as you said. Like, it can still be top 15, maybe top 10. I think it's right on that border. The Kevin Browns, the Messiah Mickens, those two Harrisburg kids, the two quarterbacks they got, those guys are all pretty highly rated prospects that are carrying this class. They've got a couple of receivers. Um, but it's fallen short of, what at one time looked like it really had a great shot to be a top 5 class. And it's fair to be disappointed in that. And, you said 2022, obviously great. And 27 is off to a great start too. 2 or 3 of those kids that are already committed could really end up being 5-stars by the time it's all said and done. The running back already is. And Penn State's still got to work to recruit those guys, and they're going to cost money too. But that's why Penn State gets on these kids early, to build that relationship. And then when it comes time to talk money, Penn State's going to be competitive. I mean, that's a thing to remember. Like, Penn State's never going to blow people out of the water right away. That's not how they do things, but they'll be competitive. There's a lot that goes into this. Obviously, losing all those top targets hurts, and there are some reasons that are, don't taste so good for Penn State fans. But it's just the reality. It's the way Penn State operates. It's the way other schools operate, and you're left with sometimes missing out on some of those really top guys.
Yeah, talking recruiting here with Max Ralph. I'm Bob Flounders here on the Blue White Breakdown. Before we move on to a couple other things, before I put Max on the spot, I've already warned him about it, but he's going to like it. Just the more I watched O'Brien, the stuff that was out there, and looking at the school that he is going to, I will say this, and I'm not saying that it's going to pan out, but looking at how he moves and looking at his body type and thinking that he's going to fill out, like he's not done probably growing, and adding weight. It's hard for me not to think of Kyle Hamilton, the
Yeah.
safety that's with the Ravens, who's already a star.
Hmm.
Not all safeties you can play. Like, Hamilton's like 6'4", 225, and he's playing. Well, he's like a hybrid, right? He's a hybrid, but he can do about 18 different things for the Ravens. And when he's
Hmm.
healthy, the Ravens defense is really, really tough. But that's who he kind of reminds me of. It's rare to see an athlete that big move that well. And I'm just wondering, I can't help. I just immediately thought about him a little bit. If he is as good as people think he can be, he's probably the guy that I would compare him to. And that's pretty high praise. But I mean, you just don't see kids that athletic, that big, move that well. And for me, that's the guy. The more I watched O'Brien, that's the guy I kind of thought of.
Well, listen, Penn State's secondary has been pretty good over the past few years too. I mean, Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter have done a really nice job. Obviously, Poindexter has churned out a bunch of NFL safeties back to back to back to back. But Notre Dame has too. I mean, if you look at the secondary that Penn State played against in the Orange Bowl last year, like, Xavier Watts, Benjamin Morrison. There are certainly other names that I'm just forgetting off the top of my head right now, but like they had a really good secondary. So, you can't entirely fault Kari Adams and Joey O'Brien for wanting to play for the Irish. I mean, they're a good program. They're doing the right things right now, and they've had success. So, I think that, but yeah, I'm with you. Joey O'Brien's build definitely kind of is reminiscent of Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of quick notes before we get to me asking Max, and I'll have some comments as well. An interesting question or two about the current team. Um, a bit of wrestling news that it may or may not impact Cale Sanderson's Penn State wrestling program moving forward, as if they need any more kids to be the best team in the country. Oh, this kid is very special. An in-state kid who's a phenom, Bo Bassett, Bishop McCourt, back in early February, committed to Iowa. Well, Sunday night went on social media and he announced he's decommitting from Iowa. It's a big blow for the Hawkeyes, who were getting a lot of credit for coming into PA and taking Bassett. I think that I always got the feeling. I remember right before he announced he had Penn State in his Final Four, along with like Oklahoma State and I think Virginia Tech. But when you're around Cale a little bit, like he's like I think his mindset is, you know what, we want the guys that want to come here and kind of do things our way. And
very similar to James Franklin.
Honestly. We're happy to get these guys. Our track record speaks for itself. He didn't mention necessarily. He didn't really say, and he had nothing negative to say about Bo. And why would he have? The guy is a fantastic wrestler who's been wrestling at a very young age. He's a specimen. He has not lost in high school. He's already a standout on kind of the world and national stage. So he's got another year of high school. I'll be curious to see what he decides, but I think a lot of Penn State wrestling fans are going to be wondering, hey man, maybe he'll stay in state. Penn State's got a loaded, even though Penn State lost a lot of good wrestlers off this last team that set a points record at the NCAA championships, breaking their old mark. That get used to me saying that.
Yeah.
They just have so many good kids ready to go at almost every weight, whether it's NIL or whether it's guys they're recruiting. So, yeah, Bo Bassett, Max, is not an Iowa Hawkeye. He's got a decision to make. Hopefully he'll take his time and get it right. But I know that's one thing that Penn State wrestling fans will be following in the coming weeks and months, and maybe James Carlson and I'll get to it on PennLive's wrestling podcast once we get closer to wrestling season. That's one note, Max. I'm glad you brought that up. We can mention, and also a note that I think you're going to be writing something about. Penn State just dropped some news about an initiative they're going to be doing to try and get the fans and NIL and players. The news just came out. I'm still trying to figure out what they're trying to do, but Max, you have a better read on it than I. But this is aimed toward the fan base and maybe revenue and NIL. So why don't you just tell the fans what's going on?
Yeah, it's well. Let me just say I have to say something first, and I do say this in jest. But Bob, do you think that Joey O'Brien's check has been scratched with some whiteout when had the name Bo Bassett put onto it?
We don't know that. We don't know that for sure, but Penn State fans are gonna be very curious. So we'll see Oklahoma State's a possibility, I'm sure. So a lot of schools, we'll see what he wants to do.
Yeah. So to get to the news, so it's called Roar Plus. It's a new subscription-based platform for Penn State. I need to read into it still a little bit more, like you, Bob. But essentially, if anybody knows what Cameo is, which I'm sure many of our listeners do, you can kind of pay for celebrities to do whatever. It's not exactly that, but like you're paying for this subscription service to see some like exclusive content of athletes. Apparently, there's a chat function as well where you can talk to them. If I'm being honest, it almost sounds like a way to pay for social media. But of course, with the ability for schools to do this, and for even on social media, people can profit off of their pages these days.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like just uh, a way for Penn State to funnel that stuff through the university and directly to the athletes. I mean, that is where it goes. So, there's a lot of different ways that Penn State's trying to get into NIL. I'm not currently aware of any other schools doing something like this. That doesn't mean it exists, or
Mm-hmm.
it does not mean it does not exist. Excuse me. I'm not aware of it at the moment. Good on Penn State for trying new stuff to see if it works. Especially when it's fairly widely known that you know the top level of boosters, Penn State does not possess it in the same way that some of the other big time football programs do. So you got to get in on the ground level of NIL and build it up in some other ways. They also, of course, I think a lot of people noticed this offseason added I think it was called the Legacy Fund fee to parking tickets, all of the above for things on campus starting next year, which that stuff goes toward revenue sharing and NIL efforts and whatnot. So Penn State's figuring out other ways to do things. This is another one. We'll see how it goes. We'll certainly see how it goes. But yeah, I guess some exclusive content creation, maybe some chatting with Penn State athletes. There's some different stuff that's coming to this new Roar Plus platform. It's an interesting one.
All right, Max. I know you're on, Matt. That's something. Once we sign off on that podcast, I think you're going to be having. You'll have some more information probably on PennLive on that. But yeah, like it literally, the news just dropped maybe less than an hour ago. So we just wanted to mention that here on the Blue White Breakdown. Now, Max, as we get to, we're more than halfway home here on the Blue White Breakdown. I was pondering this. I wanted to ask you because I have some thoughts as well. As we get closer, I think we're officially inside of 10 weeks. I think it's like 69 days or 68, whatever it is. But we're getting closer and closer to the start of the season, August 30th, Nevada, the Wolfpack. I think they're 43.5-point underdogs. So I'm not worried. I don't think Penn State fans need to be worried about that game. But as we get closer to the start of August camp, I wanted to ask you about a couple of players. And they don't have to be young players. They could be literally any age of player, any class designation. Maybe a couple of players that you are really, really interested to see this year in terms of, like, Penn State's got a lot of players. Like, we pretty much know what we can expect to see from Katron and Nick. We pretty much know what we can expect to see from Deni and Zane Durant. I think Penn State fans are hopeful that Drew Aller, who is one of the top returning quarterbacks in the country, can take yet another step because I think that is going to be necessary. But we know about those guys, right? We know about AJ Harris. Mm-hmm. Who are a couple of players at any age that maybe you personally, based upon what you saw in spring or how 2024 concluded, who are a couple of players? You can just give me one and I'll give you one that you're really excited to see. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you, who is one player that is flying under the radar that by the middle of the season could be a very key component to this team? So, but let's start first with a couple of players. You can go first. Who's one player you are very excited to see and why?
Okay. A loaded question, Bob, of course. And I love it. I'm ready, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, the wide receivers are an easy answer. That's not where I'm going because we just have not seen them, and they're very important. But that's not where I'm going. I'm going to go with Xavier Gilliam. He's tops on my list.
Yeah.
For kind of relative unknowns, just because he's only in his second year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say the number was 55 snaps he played last year. Got a little bit more down the CFP run when guys were either injured or in Neiman's case left the roster. But Penn State needs him to be a number 2 or at worst number 3 caliber defensive tackle this season. I mean, he's going to play a lot of snaps this year if he's healthy and needs to be productive in doing so. He needs to be able to stop the run. Getting after the passer, I think, is part of his skill set. He played defensive end in high school. but Zane Durant's good enough at that as it is on passing downs. They really need a run stopper. Alonzo Ford, also looking like he's going to come back on track, healthy and everything. But Xavier Gilliam, for sure, one of those names that like we keep hearing good things about. Seen him do crazy things in the weight room. The kid can really squat. I mean, he's strong. Staff likes him. So excited to see him like put it together on the field because he's been on my list for a while.
Yeah. Max, I could tell you this. If you hadn't have mentioned him in one of your two picks, he was definitely a guy I was probably going to mention. I'm going to go a little bit in a different direction. A guy that I'm very excited to see this year for a lot of different reasons is Khalil Dinkins.
Yeah.
Older player, really kind of had to wait his turn at tight end. Man, like there's been a lot of good guys in front of him, right?
Mhm.
Tyler Warren, Brenton Strange. The list is, even Luke Reynolds, who's younger than him. That's an obvious one. I thought about, but I think Khalil Dinkins, just because if you really watched him, I mean, Tyler Warren was so good that it was hard to watch any other tight end, right? But they were in a lot of multiple tight end sets, and Khalil Dinkins got better and better and better. Usually, when he got the ball in his hands, if you look at his career catches and his career touchdowns, it's a pretty good ratio.
Mhm.
He can move very well. I think he has vastly improved as a blocker. That's something that his teammates and I think Andy Kotelnicki and Ty Howell have mentioned. I just think he's such a versatile player
Mhm.
that can help them in a variety of ways. And yes, like without Tyler Warren, you're going to wonder about where the production is going to go. But they have a stout running game. The receiver core had better be significantly better with the amount of resources they've invested in the talented transfers they've brought in. But I do think that a healthy Luke Reynolds, man, in a two tight end set is going to be a matchup nightmare. But I do think that it's kind of easy to kind of forget about how much Khalil Dinkins has improved since he's gotten to Penn State.
Mhm.
And I really do think that Kotelnicki is aware that he's got a versatile weapon. I think he's going to use him. And I think when they get in the red zone, despite all, I mean, they have so many different ways they can score touchdowns. Right, the quarterback can run. They have 2,000-yard running backs. They have a speedy wideout. They have now they have the kid from Syracuse who had like 90 catches last year. They have done a fantastic job in adding different Hudson, a different from USC. They have so many different weapons, but I do think Khalil Dinkins is a guy that I think he could really take a huge step forward. I think he could be a really, really big part of this offense.
Absolutely. He's a talented kid who just, as you laid out, he's always been the bridesmaid and never the bride. But certainly a chance to do it this year. I think my favorite part about his game and his career so far is for his whatever it was, his redshirt sophomore through redshirt junior year or whatever. His first like 6 catches, I think, came either on fourth down
Yeah.
or on a touchdown. I mean, like the guy was absolutely clutch in his role to begin his career. I think he's still got some of that to him. So good pick, Bob. If you want one more from
Yeah.
me,
One more from you. Go.
I'm going to stick on the offensive side since I went defense first. And this one is like, I don't know if it's a weird one, if it's out of the blue, whatever you want to call it, but I'm going with Nolan Rucci
Hmm.
because I don't know how he's going to be used yet. I mean, he and Donko should both be healthy for the season.
Mm-hmm.
They split time at right tackle last year, but listen, we watch that offensive line a lot, and other people who watch even more than me and watch more teams than
Yes.
I do
Mm-hmm.
have said this that he was Penn State's best offensive lineman down the stretch last year. Once he came in for the injured Donko, he made some blocks that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really good. There was one, I believe it was in the Big Ten championship game against Oregon,
Yep.
that I just like watched over and over and over again. He made a reach block that was just gorgeous. He was a 5-star for a reason. And it seems like he got to Penn State, was finally able to put the weight on, keep the weight on. He's learned the scheme, and like him from the beginning of last year to the end of last year was almost a complete 180. And he was really, really good down the stretch. So I'm curious to see how he's used this year. Phil Troutwine made a comment at one point when we were asking him about the right tackle position. Javen Williams plays right guard and right tackle. He could be used a lot of ways, but he made a comment that Rucci could play guard too. I don't know if I see that happening necessarily. I think that might have just been a kind of a like, look, we have a lot of options. Anybody needs to be able to play anything type of comment. But he did put it out there. I just think that this offensive line's uh, best combination includes Nolan Rucci in some way. So I'm curious to see how he's used, and on a larger scale, like if he can keep up the play that he had in the college football playoff last year.
Yeah, he was when I'll remember when Donko went down in the very early in the Minnesota game, and he came in again on the road against that was a pretty good defense, especially playing at home, and
Yeah.
so it took him a little while to get going, but he had already played. He played a bunch, and he was their swing tackle, but he just got by the time the Big Ten title game came around, I think everyone. I know the Oregon defensive line knows who Rucci is. I can tell you that because he, like you said, everyone ate well that day up front for Penn State's offensive line, tight ends included. But he made some just unbelievable blocks, and it continued as the season went on. He has played himself into, I think, a very long NFL career. I was torn. I had a couple of, I was toying with mentioning a defensive end, but I am just not sure yet. I think Penn State, now that Max Granville is out with a long term injury and possibly he could miss the whole season. I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 guys that two of them are going to pop, but I'm just not sure which one it is, and I haven't seen enough of some of the younger players. So I'm going to table that one. I'm actually going to go with. It's like fishing with dynamite, but I just am really, really, really excited to see Cooper Cousins play. And
Yeah.
now that JB Nelson's at Kansas State, I know that the coaching staff and I know that the players really like Shanahan, the Texas A&M transfer, who does have playing experience, and he was a really high profile recruit. And I do think he's there. There are no guarantees that it could very well be. They could be rotating guards, but Cooper Cousins. I just looking at him, looking how comfortable he was as a true freshman when he was in the game, and his composure. He's already kind of a team leader in his second year. I'm excited to see him. Much like Rucci, I think the more reps he gets in games, I just think you're going to see him take off. And by the end of this year, he could be, an all Big Ten caliber player if he gets the opportunity. I do know that like Shanahan, he would be the guy, but I just think when he's on the field, he's going to do some damage. So
Yeah.
he would be the guy that I would tout. Now how about a surprise player that you think under the radar, maybe not so obvious? I have one in mind. You better not take him. But is there like one guy that you think? And again, he could be a fifth-year senior. He could be a freshman. He could be a redshirt freshman that only played a handful of games last year. Is there a guy lurking out there that by the middle of October you're like, boy, this guy, I did not see this coming?
Okay, I've got one. You put me on the spot, and I was trying to rack my brain. I'm not sure if it fits the description perfectly, but I do think he's flying under the radar at the moment.
It's late June, and it's 95 degrees out. You don't have to be perfect. Everyone else is under duress as we talk about this as well. Go ahead.
But Bob, I'm going with Zion Tracy. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he's a player who already kind of popped a little bit last year. He started to play really well down the stretch. Certainly had his lumps at the beginning of the year, and as he started to get more playing time, whether it was lapses in coverage, missed tackles, whatever it was, he had the pick 6 against Ohio State that got him some buzz. Made a couple of decent punt returns, but I think that he's kind of a forgotten man right now, at least for me as well. And I think for a lot of us, because he didn't participate in spring ball, but Penn State needs somebody at that nickel position. And I think it's his to lose. We've talked to Jim Knowles a little bit about it, and he thinks, he wanted to see Zion play at that spot still. And that's a really important spot in Jim Knowles' defense. Like how good Penn State's defense is going to be is largely going to depend on how good that fifth defensive back is. And right now, I think it's Zion Tracy. And I think, like I said, I think he did some good things last year, and it came with some bad.
Yeah.
But I think by mid-October, the kid has the talent to, really be a star at a position that is going to be really impactful.
Yeah, all you needed to know about him was he was when they were shorthanded for that Peach Bowl, when there was, I think there was a last minute, I believe Kalen King at the last minute kind of caught them by surprise. They didn't have another guy, but so he was one. He was on. They turned to him. He was one of the guys they turned to.
Yeah.
tough baptism, right? That was not a great passing game to kind of be thrown to the wolves, and he took his lumps. But I'm with you. Like his splash plays are as good as any splash plays you can see. He can certainly make a play that can change the game, and he's got all the athletic ability in the world. And I do think he's got the right corners coach, and he's got the right DC to put him in the best spots. So I absolutely would agree would agree with Zion. He also wears, at least last year he wore 7. That's my favorite number. So
okay.
I always kind of watch out for him. I'm going to go even deeper than that. I just think that if this guy gets a chance to have a meaningful role, and it's probably going to require, I hate to say it, maybe a bump and bruise, or somebody might have to get a little bit dinged up, because Penn State's pretty loaded at this position if they're healthy. And I am not wishing anyone ill. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is, if this kid gets a chance to play this year, probably in a rotation, I think it's the start of an impressive career. I think he's learned a lot. It's Javen Williams. I think a 5-star kid that is now in his 3rd year, I think he played in I don't know if it was a wing tee, but the passing game, I think, was a little bit foreign to him. But hearing some of the offensive linemen talk about how he's progressed and how he's gotten better and how he might be the best athlete on the offensive line, that gets your attention, because they have some big people that are pretty talented. And when you hear that, that stuck with me, because I heard it from more than one person. And he got a chance with Donko and Rucci out. I think Rucci came back at the very end, but he was running with, I think, the ones at right tackle for almost the entirety of spring, and I think he greatly benefited from that. I think Phil is notorious for his detailed approach. I think if he gets a chance, maybe as a swing tackle, I don't think Penn State fans are going to be upset watching what he can do out there. It's been a long road for him, considering he's a 5-star. But you know what? We were talking about a 5-star at this point last year that it had been a long road for in Rucci. And once it all clicked, he's not coming out. It's going to be hard to see him not playing in the NFL and not going fairly early in the NFL draft. So I'm going to double down on the tackle position, and I'm going to go even deeper. I think Javen Williams, for me, is a guy that it would not surprise me in the middle of October if he gets an opportunity as the swing tackle, if he really, really kind of cements himself as a player that Penn State's going to count on the second half of the season and also, moving forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for his, improvement in this spring. Part of it is just playing. Part of it's being in the program for this long. Part of, like you said, we've just heard so many guys say, like, yes, it clicked. Like the light bulb went on. People were saying that about one of your favorites, Bob, Zachy Wheatley last year. I mean,
oh yeah.
And then you saw it in the fall. So no, I'm with you. And I think that Phil Troutwine's got a hard job to do this year, because he's got about 8 guys that could start on most Big Ten rosters.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of people to keep happy. The only other thing I want to say about Javen is to kind of tie this back to the top of the podcast, and we're talking about recruiting. I mean, Javen came into Penn State as a 5-star, as the top player in Pennsylvania, kind of before this NIL stuff and the revenue share. I mean, obviously the revenue sharing is much more recent, but kind of before all this felt like it really exploded, But this is a really high profile guy from in the state, or, to compare to other people in the region that came and didn't have it right away. But Penn State didn't give up on him, by any means. He didn't give up on Penn State, and now look at him. He's going into year, what is this? This is year 3 now, and he's being talked about like a guy who could be in that conversation of a starter, potential NFL draft pick, in the very near future. And that's kind of the message that James Franklin really wants to put out there. I mean, it doesn't always work, but Penn State more times than not, when they've recruited kids, no matter the pedigree, no matter what you want to call it, like even if you're a high profile prospect that it doesn't work out for right away, it's ended up working out for a lot of these guys at Penn State over the years. Wheatley is another one. I mean, he was a pretty well touted 4-star corner out of Maryland, and it didn't work for the first couple of years. He made some splash turnovers, but like the full palette of football was not there in the secondary, and now it is. So that's something to keep in mind. When you're looking at recruits and the pitch that Penn State makes, it's not always about the money. And I'm glad to see it working out for Jaden Williams because he's a really good kid too.
Yeah, and Penn State can actually just point to some recent successes, maybe not 5 stars, but Nick Dawkins had to wait till his fifth year. Before him, Juice Scruggs was a player that was in a car accident. They really liked him, but his career was really kind of put on hold while he got better from that. But he played guard, and then he played center, and he was a second-round pick. Nolan Rucci. Like Penn State can point to players that they've developed that have not exactly hit the ground running in the first year or the second year. And the offensive line this is really hard. As good as you can be really, really good. There's so much to do, so much to know, so much to get right. If you have arrived before your third year, you have to be a pretty exceptional player. Olu Fashanu, I believe was it his third year maybe that he made the big push. So I think it takes a little time on the offensive line, and I'm glad to see Penn State stay patient with Javen. I'm glad Javen stayed patient with Penn State. So I do think he's a guy to watch. Again, I just think that Penn State's offensive tackle room, when you look at their top 4 tackles, and I think he is their 4th tackle now, right? Yeah. That is a pretty impressive room. There haven't been many Penn State offensive tackle rooms this deep in a long, long time. So excited to see him, Max. I'm excited we got through this podcast. Actually, we're now entering our 37th minute of a podcast that began with some recruiting news that was bad news, a little bit of wrestling news, a little bit of news for Penn State fans, and then we just got to some players I think Penn State fans are going to want to keep an eye on because I know we're going to keep an eye on them. So Max and the Penn State fans, my message to you is try and stay cool for the next couple of weeks because summer's about to rear its ugly head, and I think it's going to be here for a while. Max, I'm glad you got to the beach. I'm glad you're in State College. I think you're in State College. If you're not, it's definitely cooler up there than it is down here.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. Yeah.
All right, Max. So we're going to be back on Thursday with a live blue-white breakdown. Also, we're shooting for noon. Max is running the show. Max, I just put you on the spot, so don't you be afraid to put me on the spot.
No, nothing scares you, Bob.
Whatever you want to talk about, we can talk about. But good chatting with you. I think it's been a good podcast. Remember to get it on Spotify, wherever you guys collect your podcasts, listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube if it's on there. You can see my pretty face. Max, good chatting with you. We'll be back on Thursday.